Is there nobody in Joe Biden's realm that's going to say in here, Xi is making sense. It's time to do something about talking because this fight is not going to end the way you want it to end, Joe.
This is a very important question. First of all, if you go back to the Bay of Pigs operation, when President Kennedy was in the White House, he was not fully briefed on everything that was going on. And he was effectively presented the plan as a fait accompli. This is going to happen. We've got it all under control. Alan Dulles said, we're good to go. And he launched it without understanding its implications. He subsequently met with President Eisenhower, and President Eisenhower said, well, President Kennedy, with whom did you speak? And he said, well, I talked to the Secretary of Defense. I talked to the head of the CIA. I talked to one or two other people. And he said, well, that's not enough. There were other people you should have consulted with on the National Security Council, people who would have told you that you were walking into a bear trap. And now, ultimately, Kennedy acted to fire the head of the CIA. And he did not make that mistake again. That was a very costly mistake, obviously. We're lucky that we got out of it as easily as we did. It hurt a lot of people, unfortunately. I think you have a similar set of circumstances right now. People do not think these things through. They're not thoroughly planned. There's too much emotion, too much passion, not enough reason. There's no one who sits there and says, before we do anything, we should ask ourselves, what do we gain and what do we lose? Is the gain worth the loss? Now, that seems very simple, but people don't do it. And that's why President Trump's position was so vital and essential in June of 2019 when he was presented with a fait accompli. General McKenzie and CENTCOM had sent this global hawk on the outskirts of the air defense identification zone that belonged to Iran, right up the center of the Persian Gulf, knowing full well that the Iranians would probably shoot it down. And gosh, we had a strike package ready to go. Air Force, Army, missiles, everything you can think of, Navy, strike package ready to launch. And sure enough, they shot the Global Hawk down, and suddenly the entire Joint Staff descends upon the White House. The War Council is held. Sir, we're ready to launch the strike package. And Donald Trump sits there and says, well, why? Was this a manned aircraft? Was this a deliberate provocation? And he just went through and asked these questions. They said, well, it was unmanned. So you're telling me no one was hurt? No, no one was hurt. And how many people are we going to kill with this strike package that you want to put together? Well, they started adding up the numbers and they got up to a few hundred. And he said, then what happens? No, he said, no, it's over. I'm not going to do it. Thank you very much. But we know that Bolton at the time was the National Security Advisor, General McKenzie, I'm told Secretary of State Pompeo, they were all cheering, let's go, let's get this done. Finally, we get the war we want with Iran. So fortunately, he was there to say no. The problem now is that these things have taken on a life of their own. Did someone go to the president and say, we want to fly 2 B-52s over the Baltic within 50 nautical miles of St. Petersburg and practice the release of cruise missiles targeting Russia?
And expect the Russians to do nothing.
President? Come on. I don't think anybody did. So who signed off on that one? Jake Sullivan? And remember, this relationship between the National Security Advisor and the president is a very important one. There is a memorandum, an executive order, if you will, that stipulates all the authorities that are devolved from the president to the National Security Advisor. These are things, much of which are classified. So they don't even need to go through the president. We don't know how that impacted this particular decision-making process. But this whole business is out of control. Someone at the helm should be holding the reins very tightly, making it abundantly clear what we will and will not do. All this nonsense about strategic ambiguity is a disaster. This is a time for absolute clarity. This is a time for the phone lines to burn up from Washington to Moscow immediately. It's not happening, Judge, and I'm worried.